Hello everyone and welcome back to my Warhammer 40k guides. I am Brady from Almost Pro Gaming, and today I have a special treat for you all. Today I have an interview with one of the best Chaos players in the world, TJ Lanigan. And in this interview, he goes over his most recent win with his Chaos list at a grand tournament, and he goes over some of his thoughts about the state of Chaos in 9th edition. So before we get into this interview, I'm sure you all want to know what his list is, so here's the list that he won the GT with. It features a battalion of Chaos Demons, which is Chaos Undivided, which features a Changecaster, a Lord of Change, the Changeling, 29 Pink Horrors, and 5 units of 4 Nurglings with 45 reinforcement points left over to bring in blue horrors for the pink horrors when they die. It also features a patrol detachment of Thousand Suns, which has Ahriman, a Demon Prince of Tzeentch, and 10 cultists to just fill out the detachment, and a super heavy auxiliary detachment with none other than Magnus the Red himself. And so now that you know the list, I have a couple of quick things to mention before we hop into the interview. The first is that you probably noticed that this video is a bit long for my usual videos, but it's packed with good information that you probably want to hear if you're a Chaos player, and it's coming from the mouth of one of the best Chaos players in the world. But for those of you who would rather have a more condensed and shorter version of this information, like what I usually do in my normal videos, I will be making an army list spotlight video about this list, and that video should be released tomorrow or the next day. In that video, I'll basically summarize everything TJ says in this video, while also adding my own points of knowledge to the video as well. So stay tuned for that if you would rather watch a more condensed version of this video, or instead just watch this one if you have the time, or watch both for maximum information. Also, because of the length of this interview, I'm not going to edit the visuals too much. Honestly, I'm just going to drag and drop a single picture for the entire interview, so grab some models to build or to paint, and just listen to the video as if it were a podcast. And then the last thing to say really quickly is that the audio for the interview is kind of scuffed for like the first minute, and that's because I accidentally had the wrong microphone recording, but I did fix it within like a minute or so. So yeah, you only have to deal with that scuffed audio for like the first minute or so. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it, so let's get into the main content of this video. Okay, so I'm here with TJ Lanigan to do an interview with him about his recent win at a GT with Chaos. So TJ, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself for anyone that may not know who you are?
Yeah, so I am an avid Chaos player. It's my primary faction. I try to make him competitive however I can. I play for the Art of War team. I'm a coach on there. We do specialized list building, private coachings, one-on-ones, things like that. And I'm also a champion of Creature Caster. So I promote all their miniatures, and I have the wonderful opportunity to use all of their minis in my games. So yeah.
I've been following you for a while, and because you've been very prominent in the competitive scene and was a very dominant Chaos player throughout most of 8th edition. You've gone through different variations of Chaos builds, like the Possessed Bomb and Ahriman and Friends with Nurgle Demons, and other variants that I'm sure that you used, but I just never had the chance to see. So what is it that made you pick the current build of Chaos you used to win this GT?
Sure. So we'll just start off with the meta analysis. So that's what I currently think that you need to be competitive in the current Warhammer 40k, 9th edition settings. So you have a lot of armies that are speed dependent. So they move very fast, they control objectives quickly, and they're able to kind of try to max out those primaries by basically running to the middle of the table or running to an objective, either preventing you from scoring or making sure they score their 15 every turn. So there's that aspect of armies out there. Then you have the other aspect of armies, which is unkillable units. So you have units like Necron Warriors, now that they've just surfaced as having their new book. They're basically able to almost become unkillable due to their ability to, if you don't kill 20 of them, the full squad, they can get them all back up with the reanimation protocols. They basically have like a quasi feel no pain. It's actually better than feel no pain. So that's a big deal too. So we look, and then the third thing is you have a lot of characters running around who are super powerful. They have a whole bunch of buffs, such as ATVs coming back from the dead with apothecaries, or bringing back other critical units. And you have auras. You have Judicars, which basically can force your combat heavy units to be forced to attack last, allowing the rest of his army to basically get combat. So with all of that, you figure out that you need a way to deal with these things. So, and the third thing, I guess, in that unkillable units is you have, units that have like 0+ armor saves. Blade Guard have a 1+, 0 in cover. Like, they are very strong and they are able to kind of tank most of your damage. So again, with all that, you get this list idea that you're going to need a way to get through that stuff. So Chaos doesn't have a ton in the way of shooting that's super effective. We especially don't have anything that's very long range. So if you were to take a Squad of Plasma, or I guess Obliterators would probably be your best.
Obliterators would be.
Unfortunately, it's
that's
Chaos's best shooting.
Yeah, and even then, it's still not reliable because of the random stuff.
Yeah. I am no stranger to the Obliterator hate. I have not liked them for a long time. I just don't think I just don't like the random rolls. I need things to be a little more consistent, and they are definitely not consistent. So you need something that's going to punch. You need something that's going to bite through. So what Chaos does better than everybody else is we do mortal wounds really well. So that's one of our biggest selling points, is we have spells that can target. Yeah, you need a way to get mortal wounds. So once you figure out, because mortal wounds will ignore Necron's reanimation protocols. Mortal wounds will be able to get rid of squads that have a 0+ armor save. That's strong. And a lot of armies right now are not taking Psychers as well because they're trying to take Abhor the Witch. So your powers aren't really getting denied often. So with all that said, I figured out I need a mortal spam list. You're looking at casters that do mortal wounds in the Chaos line. Nobody does it better than Magnus. Magnus, the issue with these spells is you don't want, people were telling me, well, you could just swap out Magnus for 2 Demon Princes. Wouldn't that be safer? The problem with that is if you are relying on these spells to do what they're supposed to do, what happens if you fail a Doombolt here or a Bolt of Change here? These things are going to impact your game in a negative way and maybe cause you to lose the game. Magnus almost never fails a spell. +2 to cast, reroll 1s on his spells. You've got the gaze to make sure things go off, and they have the ability to make a spell, he can make his spell +4 to cast. These things together with his always D6 smite / 2d6 smite, depending on how high you go, make him a very reliable character. He also most of the time kills whatever he touches in melee. With the new Shock Assault, 8 attacks, makes him very strong. So that was the idea. So that kind of builds Magnus into the list. So after you get Magnus in the list, you need some support characters. Armin's the best support character, 4,000 Suns, 3 powers, +1 to cast. Unfortunately, it means he's kind of Magnus's water boy.
Yeah, pretty much.
But, we all serve a purpose, So that gives you Armin, and then you need another caster, and you could take a Demon Prince. You could take a Terminator Sorcerer, but the problem with the Terminator Sorcerer is I feel that they're just not. The Demon Prince gives the rest of the army the ability to reroll 1s, primarily your pink horrors, which are in the list. So that gives you a easy reroll without having to take a Demon Prince from actual Tzeentch. So that helps you out a lot because that is a crucial thing for both the Lord of Change to be able to reroll 1s in combat, the pink horrors will reroll 1s for shooting, and he knows the cult spell that you're going to take, which was a crucial spell for me over the weekend. I mean, it was quite fantastic. So that gives you the Demon Prince, that gives you Armin, that gives you your Magnus already, and you got to take your 10 cultists. So you're pretty much right there. That's like 700 points right there. So you're pretty stacked. And then in the demon side, I wanted something that was strong enough to hold the line. And unfortunately, Plague Bearers are not where it's at. Bloodletters are great. However, they serve a different function. They want to get into melee, not stand there and not die. And Nurglings just don't have a big enough footprint to to basically screen all the characters, because this list is very character heavy. So you need a way to screen these characters and make sure that someone doesn't get a charge from Harlequins off or a Blood Angels charge.
Yeah, because especially with the way coherency works now in 9th edition, if they shoot at a couple of your Nurglings and stuff and just remove the couple right ones that they need, that opens up like a lane for them to get in there and get some charges off on your characters.
Yep. So, I mean, people were talking to you like, why didn't you take Beast and Nurgle? Unfortunately, Beast and Nurgle is if, their footprint is not large enough either. I mean, 9 Beasts of Nurgle, it sounds great, but once you lose 1 or 2, you can't replace that where you just took that casualty from. But Pink Horrors, you can just split and they take that, they fill that spot. Plus, you get the ability, if you roll a 1 on the morale check, to even get D6 guys back. So there's a great opportunity for that list to basically reinforce your weak spots in that screen. So they were definitely in it. If you're playing Chaos right now and you're not taking Nurglings, you're just not doing it right, unfortunately. And I mean unfortunately because I understand, I get it. You want to run your mono god, whatever it is. This list could have been mono Tzeentch, almost no problem. But yeah, I mean, we just you got to take Nurglings. They just hold all the points, man. I mean, it's just it puts such pressure on your opponent early on that they're gonna struggle to really deal with all of that.
They're surprisingly durable too for being like little models.
Oh yeah, you've got strats to bring them back in clutch circumstances. At the end of a shooting phase when they have no charges, you can bring back maybe 1 so that you don't, even if you fail morale, the chances of you losing that model are very low. And then now you hold that point. They're good for engaging all fronts. The other thing to note too is that the stuff that they are shooting at, Nurglings, they also want to target Magnus with. They also want to target the Lord of Change. So it's like
multiple damage shots.
Right. So they're like, oh, this is a problem because I only brought 3 units to deal with this. Like when you think of a standardized, you think of your typical Space Marine list. A typical Space Marine list has the ability, maybe they have 3 units of Eradicators. Great. But what do they have that deals with Magnus, the Lord of Change, and Nurglings? Well, okay, so maybe turn 1, I send the Eradicators to deal with some Nurglings, but, I need them to clear these Nurglings off almost immediately. And obviously with 5 squads of Nurglings, that's just not happening. So then they're like, okay, fine. I'll deal with it with melee, which might take longer, or maybe I won't kill them all and some will live. So it just kind of creates this annoying little thing. So that was those guys in the list. And then when you're going to take mostly, you're taking targets. The list is basically a list of units that nobody wants to shoot at. Nobody wants to shoot at Nurglings. Nobody wants to shoot at Magnus when he's fully buffed. Make 3-up invul, -1 to hit. Maybe he's toughness 8. That's not something 18 wounds. That's not something you want to shoot at. So I wanted another unit that could also deal damage. And just in case I lost Magnus and the Pink Horrors, I needed something big enough to then block the rest of the characters behind them. So the Lord of Change was definitely the next choice in the list. And with him, you grab the Exalted trait because there's no reason not to. And then I made him the Warlord so he could get the -1 damage to create, like I said, that ability for people to go like, I don't want to shoot that guy either. Like that's just not something I want to do. So that was the reasoning behind him. I also randomly rolled for his abilities. And I'll explain because this is a hotly contested subject here. People were like, are you crazy? You're rolling for it? I'm like, yes, I roll for it. Your Lord of Change is already a unit that nobody wants to shoot at, right? You're -1 damage, you got 3-up invul. So that's it. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to target this. So, I mean, like, you can then make him even better by giving him the 6-up feel no pain, and every time you save a wound, you regen a wound. That sounds great in theory, except when your opponent decides that they're not going to shoot at him at all. Now it's just kind of a waste, right?
Yep.
So with that, you have that going on, but you also have the ability too, where you think about it like this. If your opponent spends the first 3 turns killing Magnus, he probably doesn't have enough gas left in the tank to take care of another Magnus who's
Essentially, yeah.
actually worse than Magnus. So he's just not getting targeted. And he's probably not going to die ever. So you don't need the 6-up Feel No Pain. Why not roll randomly and try to get a useful ability, something that's going to make him more useful on the table? +1 damage for his spells is ridiculously strong. Knows an additional spell, casts an additional spell. Now he becomes more of a nuisance on the table because that means him and Magnus can basically be casting 4 spells a turn, which is super crazy. There's a strat in the Demon book, and there's also a strat in the T-Sun's book where they both could cast an additional spell. So, so basically, you're rocking 8 spells with the 2 of them. It just means that you have a much more stable unit on the table. And most people, when they talk about the Lord of Change, are just kind of like, I'm just not going to shoot at him. He doesn't really do anything on the table. He's just, he's just hanging out. But now it's like, that guy is really annoying and he's putting a ton of damage in, and there's not really a lot I can do about it because I can't really kill him. And I don't want to shoot at him because I already started shooting at Magnus, and I should probably kill one of them before I go to the other one. So it's kind of the reasons why I pick randomly. And then to make the rest of the list more durable, you take a changeling. That means that even if you don't roll the 5-up, the 6-up Feel No Pain, you have a 6-up Feel No Pain. It's just you don't heal. So it's basically the same thing, and you're still getting the same durability. It also makes Magnus have a 6-up Feel No Pain because he's a demon. It makes all your pink horrors much more durable as well. So you have a ton of extra little buffs that just synergize the list real well. And then lastly, we took a Herald to basically buff up the pink horrors, an extra spell, a character that can do psychic ritual and stand in the middle of the pink horrors with almost no penalties, just hang out because no one's going to want to try to deal with him. So these are basically the idea of the list. So once you get like the first 2 aspects, you're going to do mortal wound spam. It's really about building around keeping the battery alive.
So to essentially summarize what you said, or what I got from it at least, is you were going for mortal wound spam through Zinch characters, and then just providing enough bodies to be able to screen for them properly, and I assume also be able to go out and hold objectives.
Yeah, I mean, like, pink horrors are doubly good in the fact that they're an OBSEC troop, and they do really well in screening characters. They also, have their splitting factor, which makes them another undesirable target. I
Did
don't want to really
you?
shoot
I
those.
don't remember. Did you leave points open for being able to split them?
Yes, I had 45 points, which gives you six
Okay.
blues. So not a crazy amount, but enough where it's going to last you for a turn and tank some wounds with the Feel No Pain and the 6-up. Also, you want to try to keep them at the 20 for as long as possible. Like there was a game, my last game actually, where we were playing and he was like, I've killed a whole bunch of them. You must be below 20. And I'm like, actually, I'm not. You've only killed 5 pinks. There's 25 guys left. You've killed all 6 of the blues, but you've killed none of the pinks. So I've actually lost 11 models. I should be at 19. But because of, the blues, that I was able to stay above the 20. And what the 20 does is it gives you that extra shot on all their guns. So, 3 shots is definitely much more substantial than 2 shots.
Yes. Especially in like a meta with a ton of toughness 3 stuff and whatnot. Right now, though, the only toughness 3 I can really think of that's highly meta is Harlequins, but even then, they're usually in their transports for a little bit until they hop out.
Well, you're actually strength 4 with your guns.
Oh, because of the spell?
No, so the Herald adds
Oh,
+1 to the
yes, he adds
strength.
+1 to strength, and then you can
Right.
do the spell for +1 to wound.
Correct. And then you can do the other spell and you can randomly roll, and either they get +1 toughness or +1 strength. So they actually could be strength 5 +1 to wound.
Oh, okay.
Which is super powerful. I mean, you can basically shoot Marines wounding them on 2s. So yeah, it's AP dash, but it's like
90
40
shots.
something.
Well, if you
It's like,
have 30 of them.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's a
mean, you
lot of
should hit
shots.
with rerolling ones, you should hit about 50 times, and then you should wound on twos. I mean, that's basically like 35 wounds for them to make.
If that's not
35
the
wounds.
definition of weight of dice, I don't know what is.
Yeah. So I mean, it's super good, and they're just kind of standing there. It's also an assault weapon, which means they can run. Yeah, it's -1 to hit, but I mean that's not a big deal for them because they're mainly just there to hang out. So it does give you some really flexible power with them.
Yeah, I assume you bring them more so for like the screening and objective grabbing and less so for the damage, even though they can do damage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain times where you need their guns, but most of the time they are really good at screening and just kind of making an island where your opponent can't get anywhere near your characters.
Moving on to the next question. Did you build your list around any secondaries? And if so, what secondaries were they? And what secondaries did you find yourself most often taking?
So the list plays into um, while we stand, we fight very well. And I'll explain, right? Because people were like, oh my gosh, why would you take while we stand, we fight? If you lose Magnus, you lose 5 points. Yeah, that makes sense. Except when you think about it, right? So people take scramblers, right? Scramblers maxes out at 10 points. If they kill Magnus, the chances of them killing the bird are pretty low because of how crazy durable that bird is. -1 damage, 6 up, feel no pain, 3 up invul, double reroll on one turn. On a saves if you really needed it. I mean, the chances of him dying are very, very low. So if he lives, and then the other one's the Demon Prince, if the Demon Prince lives as well, now we're looking for, we're looking at the 10 points.
So
That gives you your scrambler
you're just
points.
perfectly content with getting 10 points for while we
Yeah,
stand we
there's
fight
no
then.
reason why you need to be upset with scoring 10 points on a secondary when people are scrambling and spending CP to get scramblers. Like people spend CP to outflank their models
Yep.
just so they can get scramblers. This list basically just stands there and gets 10 points for while we stand, we fight almost no matter what.
Just for existing on the table, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, there's no reason to be upset about that. And then if you're doing well, which was every one of my games over the weekend, Magnus just doesn't die. Now you just score your 15 points. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, Magnus nor the bird died the entire weekend.
Anywhere in your list did you take I think it's called temporal manipulation, the healing spell?
Yep. Yeah. So
I'm
we
assuming
take
maybe
all the
on
fixins.
Aramon, like you took the defensive stuff on him.
So Armin takes Firestorm, Weaver, and Glamour. I wanted everybody to do a damage just in case Magnus dies, so that you could start swapping out spells early on.
Okay.
The Demon Prince actually takes Temporal Manipulation, and then he takes Warp Time.
Okay.
And like Magnus can heal 2d3 every turn.
And then Magnus is just full on damage spells. Like I'm assuming like Doom Bolt and stuff like that.
Yeah, so Magnus takes Doombolt, Infernal Gaze, and Gateway.
Okay.
And then the bird takes Bolt of Change. He wants to be a player too. He wants to hang out.
Makes sense too. Yeah,
And
I
then
don't know too we were kind of talking about earlier. I don't know if you're aware, but recently, I think it was about when did the Space Wolves book come out?
November. 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so when I got my hands on that book, I did like a review battle report on Tabletop Simulator, like I streamed the game.
Mhm.
I made a Space Wolves list against Thousand Suns because thematic, why not?
Mhm.
And I made a very similar list to what you have, only replaced like the pink horrors and Nurglings with rubric marines because I was trying to keep it themed for Thousand Suns.
Right.
But the list actually does surprisingly very well, even with just the rubric marines, although I do think your version is more optimized.
Yeah, the problem with the rubrics is kind of the same thing with all the other stuff, like the Beast and Nurgle and the Nurglings. Like, why don't you take those instead of pink horrors? Is you just don't have the same amount of bodies. So a brick of 20 rubrics is 360 points. A pink horror bomb, 30 of them is only 255. And that's with the banner and everything like that. So yeah, they're not as strong, but I also have a 4-up invul every turn, and I don't have to spend a CP just to give them a 4-up. I also have split points. I have a much larger footprint. So not only do they get to stand there and block all my characters, they also get to hold objectives, which is super important. Because again, like we talk about, like a Harlequin player only needs such a small gap to get a character in there. He will,
Oh, with
these
their
guys are
flip
on
belts and
25
stuff
millimeter
too. Yeah,
bases.
they can jump over stuff too. So
Yeah. So you need to make sure that you can do the things I'm talking about. So this allows you kind of to screen your characters, I think, much more efficiently. But I mean, that's a cool list too. I don't mind that either. I think that might be better when obviously rubrics get 2 wounds each.
yeah, we were saying that at the beginning too. It's kind of unfortunate they're still stuck on 1 wound, and it'll
Mm-hmm.
most likely be more viable when they do go up to 2 wounds. But
Yeah.
currently, right now, I like your version of the list a lot better.
Well, I appreciate that.
So for secondaries, you said while we stand, we
Oh, yeah,
fight is
sorry. So
essentially what
yeah,
you built around, and then
it goes into ritual obviously really well as well. Ritual is just an easy one. You do have a throwaway character that can kind of stand there. The other thing about that is that you can spend the first 3 turns basically bullying your opponent and kind of pinning them into place with some of the more movement hampering spells, because the list has 2 of them.
yep.
And you can kind of just shut down the viable units and kind of piecemeal their army, and then by turn 3 you should have a pretty good foothold on the middle of the table at that point. And then with that you should be able to start ritual with your herald. So
So you do
and again,
ritual
it's
with
no
the
risk.
herald then.
Yeah, almost always the Herald. I think one game we did the Demon Prince because just it was the Custodes matchup, and I wanted to make sure that he couldn't just snipe him out with
Yeah, because
bolter
that's what
fire.
I'm always worried about too, is just like having a little character like that, which is arguably easy to kill, while when it doesn't have like a ton of screen and stuff around it.
Right.
Wouldn't you
Well, that's
feel
why you
kind
got
of
to
worried
keep,
about losing him before he can get all 3 off?
No, I mean, like again, you have the Lord of Change stands there. That's got the character rule built in. Then you have the pink horrors that kind of stand in front, wrap around him, and then after that you have Magnus. So I mean, they would have to do some serious. That again, that's why we take these 2 big characters that can kind of
Oh yeah, because you can
um,
put the Lord of Change beside him, and then yeah,
correct. Yeah. So I mean, like, I make sure that's again while we were building this list, I was like, I want to make sure that if I lose Magnus on turn 1 and he just nukes all my pink horrors, that we could just kind of,
yeah,
you
that
know,
that was my idea when building, like adding the Lord of Change to my list too, was that like the Demon Prince, the Aramon, and I think there was another character, I can't remember which one. But they just kind of hung out with the Lord of Change all day because your opponent has to chew through that thing, which they can't really chew through too easily, and your
right.
characters just get immunity from shooting for pretty much the entire game.
Yeah. So I mean that's really why I wasn't too worried throughout the games. The only reason I was worried about the Custodes game is because he was running Sisters of Silence. Sisters of Silence have a strat. Well, firstly, they target characters automatically, and secondly, they have an ability to turn their bolters into damage 3. Sorry, assault 3, and assault 3 bolters will basically just tear through a toughness 3 model. I mean, you're hitting on 3s re-rolling, and then wounding on 3s as well. It's not good. It's not fun at all.
So it really just comes down to like a protect the president play style in a way. Just keep that guy alive, keep him in the center of the board, get
I mean,
those
I
3
play
spells
defensive by
off.
nature. So even with Magnus would cast all his powers and then yo-yo him back into the pink horror embrace. So that's every turn. You want to prevent melee charges. You want to prevent him being the closest model for small arms fire. You want to prevent him being the closest model for smites and things like that. It's just not something you want to do. I mean, he's a
Yeah,
460.
I assume you save him for his melee until after most of the threats are dealt with and he can reliably go in by
Yeah,
himself.
yeah, I'd say turn 3, unless there's something like crazy, like we're gonna win the game if we get this charge off, like,
Something like that,
um,
yeah.
or they have literally no way to deal with him. So, I mean, in my first game, after we got rid of the Shining Spears, he had no fusion pistols. So it was like, okay, well, you have literally, and all of his weapons were damage 1. I was like, you literally have no way to deal with Magnus. We can just send him out and he can do what he wants to do, and you're just not
Yeah,
going to be able
just
to
be a
deal with it.
big beat stick that they got to deal with while the rest of your army's sitting on points and
Right.
smiting from far away.
Yeah.
Yep, makes sense. And I
And
think
then
too,
lastly, it does engage pretty well. You know, you got Nurglings to start, and then late game you finish it up with the demon, Magnus and the Lord of Change. So, you know, the first 2 turns, you end up with your, 3 points for the first 2 turns. You start with 6, that's pretty good already. And then if you just score 2 points on turn 3, and then on turn 4, you score your 3 points again because you've kind of broken their backs and you're kind of able to move around your models where they need to be. And then maybe turn 5, you score your 3 points again. I mean, that's 14 points out of 15. And maybe turn 4, you only score 2 points. That's fine. Again, I think a lot of the time people take secondaries. I think pro players are really good at this, but I think people who are struggling with secondaries, I think somewhere where they go is they're like, I need to score 15 on all my secondaries. Like, it just doesn't happen like that. You can realistically just go and do 12-point secondaries, 10-point secondaries. The goal here for most of your games, especially as Chaos, is you are preventing your opponent from scoring primaries.
Yes.
If you can prevent your opponent to score the primaries, you will win the game. Your secondaries, if you can just score 8 to 10 points on all your secondaries, you'll win just on the virtue that you have scored more than your opponent.
Yeah, I've said that in a few videos as well. There's a reason why primary scoring is called primary scoring and secondary scoring is called secondary, because primary is the more important one. If you can win on
you
the
also
primary,
can't get it back, right?
Yep.
So like you have a limited window to get these. Turn 2, 3, 4, 5 at the beginning of the turn. Secondaries can be achieved at another time. There's hardly any of these secondaries that you can't achieve in a couple of turns if you've missed the first 2 turns. Ritual, you can do it as long as you start by turn 3. Scramblers, you can do it as long as you start by turn 3. But primaries, if you just get a 0 on turn 2,
which is pretty
you
hard
don't
to
come
do.
back.
Usually you get 5 points at least.
Yeah, but if you, there are games where it's score hold 2,
Oh
hold
yeah,
2.
the later missions and yeah.
I mean, if you're just going to score a 0 on one of your turns, you could just lose the game. And maybe you don't score it on turn 2. Maybe turn 2 you score your normal 10, but maybe on turn 3 he kind of took you off of a couple of objectives. If you just score a 5 on one of your turns and he's scoring 10 every turn, they're not coming back. They're not going to come back. So that's a big deal that I think a lot of people kind of sleep on, where they're like, well, I need to score 15 on all my primaries. But if you talk to any pro players, any of the play testers, any of the pro players, they'll tell you, generally our games are decided when my opponent scores a 5 or a 10 on primary and I score a 10 or a 15. They up them by 5 because those points don't come back generally. So that's the deal here. So those are the 3 that I generally go with. Minimize losses is always a good one, but obviously that's a mission-oriented one. Bring it down, and then we go a mission. I did assassinate one game because he had a lot of characters. I mean,
so is there like 1 or 2 that you go with every game, pretty much no matter what?
While we stand, we fight.
And that's it? And then other than that, you pick 2 based off of what you feel is best for that matchup?
Engage is probably an 80%, but there are certain matches where it's just not going to work. Their army's too fast. They put too much damage early on. But I would say while we stand, we fight.
Is 100%, and then engage on is 80%, and then the rest of them are just matchup.
I would say ritual is probably 60% as well. And then if it's not ritual because maybe they have too much damage or maybe they can put too much pressure in the middle, it's probably one of the killing ones, either assassinate or bring it down or something like that.
So with that said, with the chaos list that you've done or that you're playing with right now, do you plan on sticking with this? Are you changing up the build at all? Is there anything you noticed that you would have liked to change after the event?
No. Everything performed just as. There isn't a lot of wiggle room in the list, unfortunately. Like you could maybe cut down the pinks to give you more Nurglings in squads. That was something we thought about. Originally, I thought about taking, like I said, that Demon Prince over that Sorcerer, which would give you 80 more points. But when it's all said and done, like Demon Prince is okay because he gives you some more synergistic options with the rest of the list.
Okay.
So, like I said, the reroll ones is very important. And being a Demon Prince is really good when you in the later turns where you can go out and do stuff. It's important to be able to have somebody, maybe after Magnus has died, who's going to go, I have 8 attacks, I'm -2, I'm 2 damage each, I can go rip a small squad off an objective, no problem.
Yeah, he's still a
Or
little beat stick within himself.
yeah, I mean, especially against Imperium, which if you look at any of the test data is like 70% of the meta is Imperium. So, I mean, Death of False Emperor is still a big deal for him. No changes. Everything's the same. We're going to run it. We've got some events coming up, so we're going to try to see what we can do.
Is there any other chaos combinations that you've tried in 9th edition? Anything
Oh,
else that
yeah.
has like promise or potential depending on what Games Workshop changes with new codexes coming out and whatnot?
I mean, obviously, keeper spam is strong. The problem with keeper spam, I feel like, is that if your opponent just has an answer to deal with that, so like one of the lists, Admech does a ton of damage. They'll just pick up keepers before you even get to do anything with them. That's an issue. And like Dark Angels Eradicators, or Salamanders Eradicators, just a lot of squads of those guys will just not make you feel good at all. So but I feel like that's a strong list for Chaos. I was running 44 Nurglings for a while, just crushing RTTs, just taking down RTT after RTT. I think we took like 5 or 6 RTTs in a row with that list. Super powerful list. It's very synergistic. However, it just cannot beat Necrons. I can't do anything about 20 OPSEC models because I can't kill them. There's no way to kill them. They just kind of run around, do what they want. The list had like 3 Plague Burst Crawlers, which was cool, and like 3 Plague Burst Crawlers and some Foul Blight Spawns, and just some very, lots of Nurglings. Just very difficult unit to peel off the table.
Yeah, very
Peel
board
off the
control
table.
style
Yeah,
list. Just control
but
the
board control
objectives.
doesn't matter now that the Space Marine book's out, and White Scars got even more stuff to help their White Scarness, and Necrons got a book that basically gives them a pre-game move and makes them double obsect if they're already obsect. That's just no.
Yeah,
Nurglings can't deal with that.
yeah, when I made my tier list not too long ago, I didn't even have all that much testing with Necrons, and kind of like how you said, like at least with my testing, it's not like I'm testing against top players or nothing, so there's only so much you can get from it. But yeah, I predicted that Necrons would be doing like very good going into
Yeah, I mean,
into
Necrons and
9th
Space
edition after
Marines
the
are probably like
Codex.
the 2 top armies. It's obviously no surprise that the people with the book are good. But I mean,
Well, it's
like I
like 8th
said
edition all
before,
over again. When people got their first codexes, they were the ones dominating for a bit
yeah,
until
I mean,
everybody
Death
caught
Guard
up.
were doing amazing in the beginning of 8th edition when we got a book early on. They were doing really well, and so were Chaos Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines were doing great in the beginning of the edition. So we'll
Then
see
they
what
just got
happens.
out power creeped essentially.
Oh yeah, but yeah. So those are the lists that I think work in the Chaos meta. Austin ran an interesting list that had double a blitz. One unit that basically comes in off the flank, and then one unit that basically gets Alpha Legion the whole game, and it just kind of walks up the field untargetable and just puts down the firepower. That's a cool concept too. I like that list as well. I just don't like Obliterators, so I couldn't do it
So
myself.
with you being like a diehard Chaos fan, what would you hope that Games Workshop does with any of the Chaos factions when they eventually update their codexes? What would you like to see from those
I
armies?
mean, Demons need a brand new rework. Yeah, we're winning. Like, I'm winning games with Demons, but like 2 models out of the entire book is what I'm using. I mean, I'm using a Herald because I have to, because it synergizes well for +1 strength. I don't want to use that Herald, and I certainly don't want to spend 100 points for a changeling that casts 1 spell just because he gives me a 6-up Feel No Pain.
Yeah.
Not worth it at all. But we do it because it's just an extra level of durability,
And that's just what you got, right?
and it's just what we got. I mean, durability is what the thing that Demons and Chaos have to do the best. I feel like that's how you win games with Chaos, is you have to last on the table longer than your opponent. So I'd like to see them completely reworked. I think Core needs a rework. Yeah, they hit hard, but like they're not really that fast. Slaanesh, wow. Slaanesh just needs a ton of stuff. And yeah, keepers are great, but demonettes are horrifically bad.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, Plague Bears got nerfed into the ground. I will take responsibility. Jim and myself, we will take responsibility for this. I apologize to everybody. I mean, when me and Jim probably won 20 GTs last year
Yeah.
combined, I mean, it was insane. So
Yeah, you
You know,
guys were dominating pretty hard with that list.
yeah, I mean, and the craziest part about that was like you knew what my list was. It didn't matter. Like I had so many games with that list. I'm so comfortable with that list. I literally would go to games where people were like, "I've read up on your list. I know exactly what it does. I know 100% how to beat it." And then we'd be like, "Yeah, okay, let's do it." Like I just it didn't matter. Like that list was so strong. However, again, that's utilizing 1 or 2 units in that book. I think Greater Demons. I think need a rework. Their ability should not be I get to use their morale. That's not what I want to spend three. That's a 300 point
Yeah,
character. So that I think needs to get fixed. I want you to fix my Primarks badly.
like
I want you to
Magnus
fix
and
my Primarks.
Mortarion.
Yeah, they should have a 2-up armor. It would not break the game from them. I was just talking about this on another podcast. If you want to change Primarks but not make them super oppressive, all you need to do is change their Warlord trait. Just change their Warlord trait. Magnus's Warlord trait should be he has a 3-up invul all the time. Because guess what? He already has a 3-up for most of the game. And if you're trying to give me the argument that like he needs to get alpha struck, I need to be able to alpha strike him. No, that's a 470 point model. He should just be able to be on the table. If you have the firepower, you get to kill him. I shouldn't have to rely on casting a spell every turn for him to live. So that would make him more survivable, and it wouldn't break the game because he already has a 3-up. It makes him probably 10% more survivable, and you might leave him on the table in a couple more matchups, right? Because the mechanics are already there to take off the table. So it's not like he's really that crazy if he gets a 3-up all the time. And then Mortarion needs to get either the 4-up Feel No Pain or -1 damage. Then we're done. Then they're both much more playable, and I would keep them on the table, and they actually get play, and they don't break the game. I also think that my Primark should have a 2-up armor because, like, they should. I mean, Gilliman has a 2-up, 3-up invul, and no one even bats an eye. Like,
Well, he's only got 9 wounds though, but then that gives him another layer of survivability because he can hide behind stuff.
yeah, he also comes back from the dead with D6 wounds.
Well, 50% of the time.
Correct.
And it's
50%
actually
of the
only
time.
50% of the time because he can't use a command reroll on
Of
that
course.
anymore.
Yeah. But I mean, just the sheer, and he has a mortal wound sword, he's got a power fist, he's got tons of force multipliers on the table. He is arguably the best Primark. I would say the only person that comes even close to him is Magnus. Mortarion is definitely way down there. Mortarion just doesn't do the things. I love Mortarion.
Yeah, we haven't
But
really seen Mortarion for a while since like the Bash Brothers lists, like early in
yeah,
8th edition. That was pretty much it.
because every game, if you just straight swap Magnus out for Mortarion, every game he would just have to start off the table. He could never start on the table.
Yeah.
But those are the things I think you need to fix the book. I'd like to see that change. I'd like you to not make Plague Marines 27 points a model.
Yeah,
please.
that would be nice too.
It's gonna happen. I'm just shouting at the
So do you feel
now.
like Chaos, because from what it looks like, mainly when Chaos does well, it's usually character-centric lists. Do you think that's ever going to change, or is Chaos just going to stay like a very character-centric faction?
It's never gonna change. There's too many good characters, too many names. That's kind of how they build their market, right? I mean, like when you think about Space Marines, how many characters are named and are lore oriented? Couple, Gilliman, Marnius.
Well, I'm not the person to be asking that because I know fuck all about the lore. I just play the tabletop game.
I'm sorry. I get all the lore stuff, but there isn't a lot. Is the answer? It's really not a sheer number. But we've got 2 living Primarks. We got Mortarion and Magnus, Armin. And Death Guard has tons. Death Guard has like their book is probably 60% characters and like 40% other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't think that's ever going to change.
So I guess to finish off this interview, is there any advice you would give to fellow Chaos players who want to get into competitive 40K?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's so many things that are viable right now, but you have to practice. You have to know your army and 100%, know how it plays and know all the tricks in your list, because you can't afford to mess something up, and you can't afford to miss practicing with your list, how it works, how it operates. So you can take a bad matchup and make it okay. I mean, it's just, you can do tons of stuff that people are not expecting, but practice is super important. You have to work on where your weaknesses are. If you build a list, you have to make sure that you can kind of shore up your weaknesses as best as possible. So, if it's an all melee list, you should probably take some shooting. If it's an all shooting list, you should take some melee. You should have some fast moving units and grab objectives. If you're a slow army or something that starts on the board, like Nurglings or something like that, like you just got to do the legwork basically, and if you don't know, you got to ask one of your friends. And I would, ask someone else who plays another army and be like, hey man, what do you think about this list? And they'll tell you, like, hey, I think that you're missing this or that. And you'll be able to go, okay, that makes sense. So if you can get that stuff down, I think that you can win with just about anything. I mean, especially Chaos. They just came out with an article today for Games Workshop, and they basically said that Chaos in general, Chaos Demons are doing extremely well. They have one of the highest win percentages right now. So you can do it. And as they said in the article, it's a number of various lists, a number of various playstyles. If you get these practice games, and you're going to know, like, okay, I know what this looks like. I know where my breaking point is. I know what to do when he does this. I know what to do when I lose this unit or this model, or when I don't go first, or when I start, when I start on the back foot, or what kind of points I need to go, and what I need to do after I lose said unit. So that's the important stuff. So I think that's the stuff you get over time. As long as you can, stick with a list that you're comfortable with. I would 100% tell people to play a list that they know how it works and know what to do, rather than try to play the new hotness. Like, people are going to try to take a list, that's super, super intricate and be like, I can do well with this because obviously it won a tournament last week. Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. That don't take that and just play a list just because. Now, if it's a variation of your list, you obviously know how that list plays. That's okay. But I'm talking about the people who just, whatever the new hotness is, they just play.
Yeah, they just go out, no, Space Marines are winning. I'm going to buy an entire White Scars army and build this guy's list. Then
yeah, so yeah. I mean,
it's going to take you a minute to learn all the ins and outs yourself and actually be able to pilot the army.
Yeah, get the work in with your own list, what you're comfortable with. 9 times out of 10, when people ask me on my chat in Art of War, they'll be like, I have this RTT coming up. Do I take the new TJ hotness, or do I take my list that I have 20 games with? The list you have 20 games with, hands down. Not even a question.
All right, but I think for the most part, that pretty much covers up everything I wanted to say. Is there any final thoughts you want to give, or any shout outs or anything like that?
No, I talked about most of them in the front. Like I said, Art of War. If you're curious about how to get better at the game, or how to learn, how to build lists, or maybe questions you want to ask. We do weekly clinics where you can ask about Chaos, what you're interested in, things like that. That's super cool. And if you haven't looked at a creature caster model, you got to go over there and look at them.
Oh, yeah, they have some really good
models. Mind-blowing. The new Lord of Change model that they have, the King of Malefica, is probably the best model I've ever put on the table. I got the special edition one, which has like a portal coming out of the back, and like pillars of fire, and like stonework and all this crazy stuff. So he looks awesome. If you haven't seen that model, you definitely need to go check that model out. But they got tons of stuff. So check them out. You won't be sad that you did.
All right. Well,
I think that's it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So thank you for the interview, and hopefully it helps out some people. Yeah, definitely. One other thing, I do have a tournament coming up. It's Steel City Legion Gaming. They're doing an entire online streaming tournament. So RTT tournament on December 5th. So if you're interested in catching me play this list, I will be running this list on December 5th. And they'll be streaming the entire weekend, all 3 rounds. They have a ton of games on there already of me playing different lists that I run Chaos, and at the beginning of the edition, kind of how the list has kind of changed and stuff like that. So they help me with a lot of my content creation. So okay, well, I'll tune into that for sure. I love watching competitive 40K. Yeah, man, it's gonna be a good time. We have a lot of high competitive players coming. Gonna be some good lists. And that's pretty much it for the interview. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. I know it was kind of slow paced and it's not my normal content, but I figured we would try something different. And so I brought TJ Lanigan on to talk about his list and to give me some more insight for the video I want to make about the Army Spotlight on his list. Also, if you enjoy this type of content, let me know down in the comments and I can get some other top players on here to talk about their lists as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I'd also like to thank my patrons for being awesome and help me do what I do here on the channel. Without them, this would not be possible, so thank you to all of them. And thanks to all you regular viewers as well. And I guess that's pretty much it. So I'll see you in the next video. Happy wargaming.